So we got to talk about what is Joe Biden's biggest failure, both politically, but also substantively and morally. It should come as no surprise to anybody that the answer here is Gaza. That there was even some polling data which seemed to indicate that had Kamala broken more strongly with Biden on the issue of Gaza, that it would have made a big difference in the election. But we have this new bombshell report that just came out that I have to share with you. U.S. envoys to Israel blocked early warning of apocalyptic wasteland in Gaza. So this is a huge, huge deal. It came out just the other day. Look at this. U.S. Agency for International Development staffers in early 2024 drafted a warning to senior officials in Joe Biden's administration. Northern Gaza had turned into a, quote, apocalyptic wasteland with dire shortages of food and medical aid. 3 months after the October 7th attacks and Israel's incursion into the Gaza Strip, the internal message laid out in gruesome detail scenes observed by UN staff who visited the area on a two-part humanitarian fact-finding mission in January and February. The staff reported seeing a human femur and other bones on the roads, dead bodies abandoned in cars, and catastrophic human needs, particularly for food and safe drinking water. All right, so let me pause here. So you're 3 months in to the genocide. You already have top Israeli government officials saying in no uncertain terms, we are now going to do collective punishment. We're going to cut off all food, fuel, water, and electricity to 2.3 million people for the crimes of Hamas, which maximum includes about 30 or 40,000 people. It is the definition of collective punishment, which is the definition of a war crime. It is completely and utterly illegal under international law. They announced they were going to do it. U.S. intelligence goes down there, fact-finding mission. They come back and say, you have no idea the horrors I've seen. All right, let's continue. But the U.S. ambassador to Jerusalem, Jack Lew, and his deputy, Stephanie Hallett, blocked the cable from wider distribution within the U.S. government because they believed it lacked balance, according to interviews with 4 former officials and documents seen by Reuters. All right, let me put this as simply as possible. Jack Lew and Stephanie Hallett, in my mind, this is treasonous. This is treason. They betrayed their country. They betrayed their country by doing this. This is for reasons of protecting the image of Israel. You go, oh no, it needs to be more balanced. But wait a second. The whole point here is the facts on the ground are not balanced. The facts on the ground are very one-sided. It's not like they went to go visit Gaza and they said, hey, half of them are actually living in utopia. It's paradise. And the other half are struggling. No, they went there and they said, I saw a fucking human femur in the road and dead bodies in cars and a collapse. This is 3 months in, and they're already talking about a collapse of the medical system. Why? Because Israel blocked all the medicine from coming in and started attacking the hospitals, by the way. On top of the schools, on top of the UN buildings, on top of sniping kids in the face. Okay? So this is insane. Jack Lew and Stephanie Hallett, if I'm being honest with you, they should be tried and arrested. This is treasonous. Because you have this report. You don't like the facts in the report. Well, I don't really give a fuck if you like them or don't like them, but they blocked the report from going higher up the chain. Now, by the way, not saying if the report did go higher up the chain that all of a sudden Joe Biden would grow a fucking conscience around the issue of Israel. I mean, they knew how bad it was anyway. They knew it was horrible. And they still closed their eyes and kept sending money and kept sending weapons with barely a hitch. Every now and then there'd be a tiny hitch, right? But barely a hitch. So I'm not saying it would have changed anything, but to have these people, the U.S. ambassador to Jerusalem, block an objective report because he goes, it's not balanced. Okay, well, the facts aren't balanced. I don't know what you want me to tell you about that. That's a you problem, okay? The facts aren't balanced. In fact, they're very, very not balanced. They're very imbalanced, unbalanced, however you want to say it. They continue here. Reuters is the first to report on the cable and why it was suppressed. Hallett and Lew did not respond to requests for comment, an official acknowledgement of the reality in Gaza. The February 2024 cable was one of 5 sent in the first part of the year, documenting the rapidly deteriorating health, food, and sanitary conditions and breakdown of social order for Palestinians living in Gaza, resulting from Israel's military campaign, 6 former U.S. officials told Reuters. Reuters saw one of those cables, the other 4, also blocked by Lew and Hallett because of their concerns about balance, were described by 4 former officials. 3 former U.S. officials said the descriptions were unusually graphic and would have commanded the attention of senior U.S. officials had the message been widely circulated within Joe Biden's administration. It would have also deepened scrutiny of a national security memorandum issued by Biden that month, which conditioned the supply of U.S. intelligence and weapons on Israel's compliance with international law, they said. So in other words, what Israel was doing was completely and utterly illegal, not only under international law, but also under U.S. law, because we would have to, by law, cut off weapons to human rights abusing countries. And there's no doubt they were abusing human rights. To comply with U.S. law, you had to cut off all the weapons going to Israel. And that didn't happen. And you had these staffers basically block the report, which would have mandated that we have to cut off the weapons, is what's happening here. Insane. By the way, they should look into the funding of these two scumbags that blocked this report, because my guess is they're getting some funds that they shouldn't be allowed to get. They're getting some funds from Israel directly, or perhaps they're Israeli spies. Because we've had that before happen in this country, where we are infiltrated by Israeli spies, like Jonathan Pollard, for example. Okay? Or, how the fuck else can you explain this? How else can you explain somebody? Any actual American who has any semblance of a conscience would take one look at this and say, this is insane. Get this to the president. We need to do something immediately. But no, they fucking blocked it. They blocked it. Quote, while the cables weren't the only means of providing humanitarian information, they would have represented an acknowledgement by the ambassador of the reality of the situation in Gaza, said Andrew Hall, then a crisis operations specialist for USAID. The U.S. Embassy in Jerusalem oversaw the language and distribution of most of the cables about Gaza, including those from other embassies in the region. One former senior official said Liu and Hallett often told USAID leadership that the cables included information that had been widely reported in the media. Former Secretary of State Anthony Blinken and representative for former President Joe Biden did not respond to requests for comment about the fact that the cables never reached upper leadership of the U.S. government. The Gaza war started with the October 7, 2023 Hamas attacks that killed more than 1,250 people. The death toll in Gaza now stands at over 71,000, according to Palestinian Health Ministry data. Now, by the way, the IDF used to say, oh, I don't trust that number because that ministry is run by Hamas. Now they say, we accept 71,000. The reason why they now accept it is because the actual number is hundreds of thousands. The Gaza Health Ministry number is a drastic undercount because they only go based off who they can prove is gone in their documented records. Well, there's tens of thousands of people under the rubble. There's people who are in mass graves that will never know, if they actually died, right? Well, they did. They're dead. They're gone. The actual number is hundreds of thousands, which is why now the IDF goes, we'll accept 71,000. With Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu by his side, President Donald Trump announced his Gaza peace plan in the Oval Office last September, but the fighting has not stopped. Some 481 people have been killed since the ceasefire, according to Palestinian Health Ministry data. The Biden administration's backing for Israel during the war deeply divided the Democratic Party. It's actually not divided at all, by the way, and remains an unresolved issue for its political candidates. More than 80% of Democrats believe that Israel's military response in Gaza has been excessive and that the United States should help people in the enclave who are facing starvation, according to a Reuters Ipsos poll last August. That's the thing, right? This isn't a contentious issue among Democratic voters. In fact, Democratic voters are almost all on the same page. Israel's an apartheid state. They're committing a genocide. We should cut off the money and we should cut off the weapons. Period. Full stop. The only reason that's not policy is because the leadership of the Democratic Party has taken a tremendous amount of money from the Israel lobby, whether it be AIPAC or DMFI. Okay. And so they unfortunately represent that worldview more so than the Democratic base wants them to. The Democratic base wants a breakup with Israel. These leaders refuse to do it. Chuck Schumer is the leader of the Democratic Party. He was just talking about how, we're going to give even more money to Israel, even more support to Israel. They are completely and utterly out of touch. This is not an opposition party, okay? We need to make it be an opposition party, and we need justice. In the same way I tell you guys all the time, Elon Musk needs to be arrested for his illegal cuts of Meals on Wheels, for his illegal cuts of pediatric cancer research. Donald Trump needs to be arrested for his fucking war crimes, okay? In the same way I talk about that, we also need a reckoning with the Democratic leadership that sat there and watched a genocide live streamed in 4K, and they kept sending money, and they kept sending weapons, and they kept fucking running cover for Netanyahu and his disgusting, fascist, bloodthirsty warmongers who are in the midst of trying to create a greater Israel project, steal Gaza, steal the West Bank, steal parts of Lebanon. Again, none of this is conspiratorial. You're looking at it in real time. You're seeing it unfold right in front of our eyes. And now they have the nerve to lie to us about a fake ceasefire deal. There's no ceasefire deal. They're killing Palestinians on a daily basis. They're stealing more territory on a daily fucking basis. So there needs to be a reckoning when it comes to the Democrats as well, because they fucking got us to this point where Trump swooped in and now he's just injecting the genocide with steroids and human growth hormone and making it worse. We needed to break up with Netanyahu and break up with Israel a long fucking time ago. It was clear 2 weeks in to the Israeli reaction that they were going to go all the way and they were going to try to do an all-out genocide. And by the way, look at what Rafah looks like now. This is Rafah in Gaza right now, one of the oldest cities on earth. Israel has annihilated everything. A city that stood for over 3,000 years, wiped off the map. Look at this. There are no words for what we witnessed. How many children killed? How many precious babies killed? How many women killed? How many people shot in the face? How many people murdered while waving a white flag? How many UN buildings attacked? How many World Central Kitchen workers attacked? What we witnessed was Nazi shit. It was Nazi shit. That's what it is. That's what it is. And we're tired of being gaslit around that fact. And our democratic leaders need to fucking reflect that. And like I said, the people who blocked that report from going up the chain, they should be investigated. In my mind, they committed fucking treason. They committed treason. They should be in prison. And we should figure out who they took money from. Because there's no American of goodwill who's honest, who can look at the facts on the ground and then not want to do something about it, not want to get that up the chain of command, not want to fix the situation, but they didn't want to fix the situation. They wanted to make it worse. I hope they can't fucking sleep at night for what they let slide. I really hope they can't. But my guess is so many of these demons simply don't give a fuck. And then finally, I'll end on this. At the same time, we learned all that. Ready? Trump did the fake peace deal with Netanyahu as trying to get the world to look away as Netanyahu keeps killing people, stealing more territory. And then we get this, ready? Trump officials bypassed Congress to push billions in weapons aid to Israel. The move was the third time the Trump administration has tried to expedite arms shipments to Israel by going around the review process for weapon sales. Holy shit. So more weapons given to Israel. They get treated in such a special way, you don't even need Congress anymore. They just like, here, whatever, go ahead, take it. We don't care. We don't care. We'll let you do whatever we want. And then they get mad at you when you say, hey, it looks like the Israel lobby has infiltrated our government and in some ways taking control of it. They get mad at you when you point that out. They get mad at you when you point out that Trump took hundreds of millions of dollars from Miriam Adelson and then does her bidding. Let Israel illegally annex the Golan Heights, right? To give just one example. Move the embassy to Jerusalem, to give another example. Now letting them create a greater Israel. They're going to let them steal the entire West Bank. All this is fucking happening right in front of our eyes. Depravity is not a strong enough word to describe how evil this shit is.
Hey y'all, do me a favor and like and subscribe. It helps out big time in the algorithm. Click the bell as well for notifications when videos drop. And watch that video on screen right now. You know you want to.